JT Miller, best player in the team. He's been notorious for being very hard on his teammates. And so he came out in the media recently, and I'm going to paraphrase, of course, because I know Dave wants me to, but Miller basically came out to Peterson, who was one of their top picks, good player, a lot of potential, but not quite reached it yet, and said essentially, you are sexually into men, if I could paraphrase it nicely, with maybe a little bit more harshness to it. And he didn't like it, and they kind of would go back and forth in a little bit of a tiff in the locker room. They'd ask Miller questions, how do you feel about it? I'm not talking about this guy. I want nothing to do with this. And so they recently traded Miller for what we described as probably the fleece of the year. They traded him for like a 7th-round pick, and Philip Cheadle, one of the defensemen for the Rangers. And now that Pedersen's on his own, he just went to the Four Nations Cup, put up 0 points, -2. I mean, his girl looked good in the crowd wearing that Team Sweden jersey, good-looking gal. But outside of that, nothing to show for. I'm curious what you think of that type of leadership, with them trading out the guy who's holding everybody accountable and has that expectation.
Yeah, I think that's placating to the masses, isn't it? Like, because I mean, a good coach or a good leader would just, I mean, can I swear on this podcast?
Go for it. We can censor it, yeah.
He'd basically say, just shut the up and do what I tell you to do.
Well, and I get it. And I think there's a fallacy in a lot of people who watch professional organized sports thinking, oh, all these guys must be best friends. And, you go into any office and there's people who work together on a daily basis. Doesn't mean they're hanging out together after. I mean, there's different personalities. There's different roles to be played on that team. And sometimes there's bullying that happens. And there's people that need to step in and kind of, like you said, make sure that there's an organization and there's a hierarchy inside of that locker room.
That's the reason why hierarchies exist in the military.
You think to some degree, and this is just what I've noticed, but hockey's changed so much the last 10 to 20 years, where I heard Brent Sopel, who we have as a guest coming on shortly, he talked about how hockey was built on respect, right? Like with these Michigan moves and how fancy these guys are getting. If you tried that 20 years, it was disrespectful to the vets. And so you get a cross-check to the teeth, and you be told how people feel. We told a story recently about with Sean Avery when he was a rookie with the Red Wings in their cup run of 2002. I guess he saw Joe Sakic, one of the greatest players of all time, walk in, didn't like his suit. They come for a face-off, and he goes to lean over to tell Sakic, hey, your suit sucks and you got bad style. Brett Hull, one of the greatest Americans of all time, grabs his jersey and says, hey, you don't talk to Mr. Sakic that way, because it was built on respect. But now where the game has changed to where the guys can do whatever they want, there's really no accountability and leadership, and they seem to really soften, so that when Miller, who's by all accounts an old school guy, says to Elias maybe something that is not societally acceptable anymore, they crumble and the teams run based off emotion.
Running Warriors off emotion never works. You go through military history, combat history, because that's all sports athletes are. Is they're fighting a war on a ice rink, on a football pitch, on a Formula One track. It's battle without blood, right? Well, in some cases there's blood, obviously, but it's still a battlefield. And you want warriors. You want strong men. You don't want weak men. You don't want pussies on your team. You want men that are competent, capable, resourceful. The juniors follow the seniors. So anything that's going to soften the team is never going to be successful. I'm pretty sure if you go back and study the winningest, hockey teams, football teams throughout history, there was probably a lot of conflict, between coaching teams, within the team, and a lot of very strict firmness, probably at the Warriors sort of like militaria type of level. Like there was no room for softness and feelings.
Well, Lou Lamoriello, what was it, Dave? He stole from the Yankees. There's only sideburns to a certain length. There's no beards. Facial hair only goes so long. This is how the
Yankees just pulled that rule, actually.
They just yanked it?
Yeah, they just yanked it. You're allowed to keep a beard now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rich, what do you make of that? That's changing of the guard there.
Well, I mean, to some degree, beards were always along with warriors. If you understand men and masculinity, one of the things they've discovered is that the point of the beard, so they believe, is to protect the jaw from getting broken, because it provides a little bit of a buffer, right? So I would say beards are probably the way of the warrior. So that might be something that team coaches and leaders might want to contemplate, rather than having everybody clean shaven, looking all feminine.
So if you enjoyed what you just saw, we do new clips every single day, twice a day on the Clips channel. You see clips right here. And beside Dave's crotch, we have a full-length show every single Sunday, right by my hand.
Click right here.